So delighted to be joined today by Sally Gunnell. Sally.
Hello.
Hello.
All right.
How are you?
I'm really well.
Good.
Yeah, great to be here.
So I was thinking about my opening question or whatever. When you introduce yourself, how do you introduce yourself these days? Because you're a lady of many kind of different.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Do you know what? I usually say I'm like everybody else. I'm a mum of three,
Yes.
trying to balance everything, work and whatever, and just some of those, I don't know, lessons I learned from winning that gold medal, performing at that high level, I use into my life now and want to be able to share, and that's it.
All right, so let me take you back, and I think that's a good segue into one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is almost a transition for whether it's a sports person or someone who's done something specific, moving into everyday life.
Yeah.
Can you take us? How did you plan that before you retired? Were you clear about what you wanted to do, or was it like that?
Yeah, it's really difficult, and because you know no other world. I decided, where the training was part of my life, probably seriously from 14 years old. So you start to have these thoughts about what else do I do, where do I want to go, all the things that I haven't been able to do, like go skiing or go-karting. It's like, so things excite you, and you start to get offers in. But it has to be a transitional process. It's not one that goes boom like that. And I think subconsciously I was thinking about it for a good couple of years towards the end of my career, because you wanted it to be as smooth as possible. But it is still really hard. And I guess I very much looked at it as a new chapter of my life, and always looked at it as, what would I have done in the world of sport? What would be the sort of like the key things that I would look at? And firstly, it was, what is the meaning and purpose of my day? Yeah. What am I waking up for? What do I want to achieve still? And that was still so important. So it was just setting new challenges, new goals, and nothing as big as being an Olympic champion, but still as, important, still as significant, and much more around, new skills that I wanted to learn that I could never do. Family, actually could think about having family, work things, and just lots of different things. But I think that just helped me to have that sort of mentality. And also I've with the world of sport, you just learn to, when you do struggle, you take each day at a time. And that's what I had to do when I first retired. It wasn't about everything forward. It was about taking each step at a time and adjusting, and some ups and downs.
Do you think you were a deeper thinker than a lot of people at the time? Because now obviously there's lots of people talking about where you're at. Do you think you're ahead of the game, but maybe you just hadn't realised the process you were going through, and it just was happening naturally because of your training?
I think you learned the skills that you had from the athletics days. And you naturally, that comes into your life because you have drilled them in your mind for years, and things about how do you get over struggles, how do you move on, all those little things that you're faced with. How do you deal with imposter syndrome, which was the biggest thing. Can you imagine when you're thrown in front of a television and you're doing a job that because you come from the world of training and preparing and doing everything as a perfectionist, almost, to finding yourself in a very alien situations that you're thrown in, which sometimes you're used to because of the sport. You've got to think quickly and you've got to move on, which is a great thing. But also you think, the whole thing of my whole career was, am I good enough? Can I do this? And here I was going again when I retired. God, these people look really good. They've been doing it for years, and you have to. I think the thing I learned, and it took me a few years, was to be yourself. And if people don't like what they see, then that's fine. But this is, I will put everything I can. I prepare myself, but try not to be somebody else.
Did you look back, and I appreciate looking back, but did you look back any time and think to yourself, there was a moment when I wasn't myself, there was a moment when I...
Oh, God, yes. When I first started doing the speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Because I'd watched lots of other people, and then you realise that's not me. You are just trying to be somebody, and you've got to be true to yourself. So it took me a little while to adjust, but I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I've taken.
Do you look on envy with sports professional sports people these days where they are kind of, there's a support structure around them to be dealing with all this sorts of stuff.
I do and I don't. I mean, part of it is, the lottery money has been brilliant, and
Yeah.
that came in after I retired. But I was probably one of the first people to realise that I needed help. I needed support. I couldn't do this on my own, and I had a great coach, but I needed a professional team in there. So I actually, the difference between coming fifth and winning an Olympics was that team that I put in place to help.
How are people around you? How did they react to that? You being one of the first people who had that team, who had more extensive team?
I think, now, if you think about it now, and as soon as lottery came in, the sports physiologists and psychologists, it's just part of their everyday. And that's, they've got to make that work for them, because sometimes I think if you're putting that effort and you're choosing the people that you work with, and it's a quite personal journey you've gone on, you've got that hunger there and a bit more passion. So I think for a lot of the athletes, they've got great people behind them, and I think it's utilising it to themselves to be able to move forward. But the bits that I look like now, I think, just the sports science side of it, the difference, I just... that would excite me. The medical side of it, because you just pick up on injury and straight away.
Your eyes are like, I wish.
That would be great. But at the end of the day, you still got to train hard. You've still got to learn how to use this up here. And I think the thing that it made me realise that when I left the sport was how hard it is, and how many well, my husband coaches, and it's a very small majority of people that actually make it, and how you've got to get it right on that day.
And are you not conscious of that when you're actually living it?
No, because you're just living it. It's just it's a job, it's a part of a process, and you're so focused on what you're doing. It's not until you come out
that's really bizarre.
Yeah, it is a bit strange, and I do. I look now. If I'm doing a talk and I watch that race, I was like, is that really me? Did I really do that? Yeah.
So let me bring up kind of your focus right now is very much now about mental health and wellness.
Yes.
Tell us about your journey, kind of as to where we are now.
Yeah, I think it's been a natural progression, and yes, it's still around, high performance and delivering, but so much of what we've all been through in the last, 5 years, and what we're going to have to cope in the future really is around our mental health, around our own well-being. And to me, it was about building that team and looking at all those little tiny increments, because sometimes you can't work any harder. We're talking about burnout. We've got to make sure that we're delivering when we need to, all of those sorts of things. And so much of that comes around about ourselves and the best version that we can be. And the thing that I learned from athletics days is so much of it is what we eat. Our recovery, how we sleep, how we deal with stress, and all of those sorts of things. So, and that is, that was then, and it's no different now. I still have a great team around me that helps and supports, and and I'm still trying to be the best version that I can be, and realise that so much of it is in the mind, and we're talking very much around mental health. And I grew up with my mother had a mental health illness and had a breakdown, so I know that it's it's within the family, and I've seen it firsthand. So I think for me, a lot of my health and well-being, and a lot of who we are with dealing with anxiety, or just having a bad day, is because of our wellness, and looking at it as a holistic look at it. So it's I think it's a really important message back then, but it's still a really important part of who I am as a person. And
where do you think society is? How well are we doing? Are we still in the learning phase, or actually?
We've still got a lot to learn. I think there's, we've got quite a few crises coming up. I think it is going to be tricky in the years to come. I'm just doing some work with a cancer charity, and they're just saying the number of people that will get cancer over the years. And one is because of, great detection of it. But it is about the mental side of it, of living with it, dealing with it, moving on often, especially in the workplace. And yes, I think people's mental health, I think, we're looking at that generation of, my kids almost, of how they have struggled over COVID and the communication and being social and that sort of thing. And, and you think, where is that going to lead in the next, 10 years? So I think they're really real areas that we have to address, and we've got to look at and help and support people.
So when you're up on stage and you're speaking, kind of, I suppose, what are you looking for people to take away from? What are the key parts you're looking for people to take away?
Yeah, I think you want people to have some real nuggets that they feel that they can actually use and take away with them. I think there's as I said, it's a real holistic look. It's a number of areas, and it's quite personal, people's well-being. But I really realise, exercise to me now is very different to how it used to be.
Sure.
Well, one is, I can't run very fast anymore. But
secondly, do you still run?
It's very slow
with
the dog, but yes. But it's still a really important part of my life, and it's around my mental health. It's about the clarity and natural endorphins, and so many people struggle to fit it into their life, how to stick with it, and that sort of process. So I really want to help and support people, in that sort of area, but also how important nutrition is, and sleep. It's sleep is when we repair our bodies, where we become, creative. Again, it does if we've had 5 hours sleep. I don't know, but I'm a grumpy old mum. Shout a bit more at the kids or whatever. So it's just highlighting those sorts of areas. Nutrition, hydration, a really important part of it. And that positive sort of mindset, because so often it is, it's a major part of my speech, is just to help people to believe in their own ability.
Right, yeah.
And that's, there's a way of doing that, and that whole piece around visualization, and quietening that inner voice up, and that's all part of your well-being, and not beating yourself up all the time, and trying to find the good things in your life. And sometimes you have to help yourself. You have to find the confidence, because people don't often give that to you. So you have to go out and find that. And that, stress can be a good thing, and stress to me is, it made me perform on that day, but it's about recognizing when it's too much, and what do we put in place, and, having people to chat to, working within the community or whatever, and just helping people support that way. And that whole piece, I think for me, what I've learned from what I didn't have from my running days was that piece around fulfillment. And you're on the conveyor belt. You're only ever as good as your last race. And I never celebrated. I was always like, what happens if I'm not as good next year? And I think it's something that I had to change as soon as I'd retired, and especially in the last 10 years. And it is just about appreciating what we have and living in the moment, and just getting off the wagon, as I say. So I think it's becoming much more important in a lot of people's life. They know they can't just keep going, and they've got to be kind to themselves.
I think appreciating the moment and celebrating it is the best thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Brilliant. And no one else is going to do it, so you have to spend that time as well.
Sally, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Brilliant.
Cheers. Have a good day.